I botched that. Let's try that again. Adam, apparently you're hosting the show tonight.
Hey,
That's my mistake. I got people in the wrong places.
well, hey everybody, how's it going?
Starting
Welcome
out
to Top
strong,
Talks 3.
Hang
Third
on.
time's a charm.
This is going to be kind of janky for a second. Let's move you guys around and
Killing the game.
There. Hey, Heath, start the show.
Solid 48 out of 55 start there. Oh my goodness. Greetings and salutations, friends and listeners of Southern Tomfoolery, and welcome to TOMTalks Alive 3. That's right. Doing TOMTalks on Twitch was so nice we did it thrice.
Nice.
which is not to imply we won't be doing more. We definitely will every third Monday. I just wanted to make that cliched rhyme.
Yeah. Well, we do have a new producer slot open.
Yeah, we do. We can't fire him. He's on the show.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm your host for TOMTalks Alive, Heath Parker. You may know me as the voice of Titanium Mike or Tex Arcana or DJ Trev or perhaps even another character or two. I'm joined as always by my co-host, the GM and space daddy of Southern Tomfoolery's Apollo Protection Agency story, the creator of objectively the best stoner character ever created for a TTRPG and Weldy from Hacky Sack Heroes. That's right. I'm talking about Adam Kelly. What's up, dude?
What's up? Kind words. Thank you. Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm freezing, but we're going to get to that.
It's cold.
And of course, I'm joined by the former producer of TOMTalks Alive and the voice of Felino Marana, a man whose sense of humor is key to Southern Tomfoolery, no matter how much it makes us groan. And you know I'm talking about my boy Josh. What's up?
I was doing great.
You're killing it, dude. You're doing great. So, guys, here in the deep South, in the dirty South, it's cold.
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit cold.
It is freezing.
And we don't know how to handle it down here.
We don't. Like, literally a little bit of ice on the roads, like we were predicted to get today, didn't even have it where I'm at. All the stores shut down at like 4:30. Like, I went to run and grab a few things. I had to just go by a gas station instead of the dollar store or whatever because everything was shut down.
No, our roads were completely covered in snow. They still are.
Yeah, you've got
will
snow.
be through tomorrow. Yeah,
you've got snow. We've just got misery.
Oh yeah. At least it's pretty here.
It's just wet and mushy and gross outside. My car door was iced closed when I went to leave, but no snow.
Yeah, it's just cold. It's just cold. Like, and all I got are these gas space heaters, and I don't even have one in each room. So, like, they're probably from 1950, and and so I'm just like sitting here shivering in my house.
I've got one of those in my hallway, but it's mounted like really high, so all it does is keep the roof warm. Like, it's the most pointless thing ever, but it's been here since I like moved into this house. And like, even I was talking to my grandma the other day. She was like, "Do you want to rehook up gas to get that heater working?" I was like, "There's no point unless I moved upstairs."
Right, in the attic.
Oh, well, I hope despite the cold, you guys are having a good day. I'm happy to be here with you.
Yeah, I love TOMTalks, man.
Mm-hmm.
So now I know this is a topic for which Adam has a lot of disdain, but yesterday was Valentine's Day. So I hope all you lovers out there had a wonderful day with your significant others, full of Eskimo kisses and chocolates and all that good stuff. And as the evening rolled in, I hope you had the most steamy, romantic, tantric night of your lives.
And you single folk, we love you too.
Well, I mean, to that point,
We hope you loved yourself.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, however you got to do it, man. But I know to that point, I know I've mentioned this before, but I've always appreciated the sort of Latin American version of Valentine's Day more than the Americanized version of Valentine's, which is Dia del Amor y Amistad, or the Day of Love and Friendship. So I find it personally a lot more inclusive. Instead of just having like a romantic day with your significant other, it's more about appreciating like all of your loved one, which includes family and friends. So a lot more of a everyone who's important to you kind of holiday. I just like that sentiment more than the way it's done here, because I think honestly there's a lot of negative emotions that can come from the Americanized Valentine's Day, what with all the cultural pressure around Valentine's Day because of the what I refer to as the Valentine's industrial complex, trying to force their capitalistic ways down your throat. Boo capitalism.
I do work for the government. I can't say things like that.
I work for capitalists. It's
boo corporatism.
Yeah.
Anyways, I mean, like, but seriously, like, there is some bad that can come from it. Like, I mean, forgetting Valentine's Day if you're in a relationship is viewed as like a cardinal sin, akin to forgetting your anniversary. Like,
which is absurd to me. I mean, it's a Hallmark holiday. It's made up to make money and to make people feel bad.
Like, this holiday to make people feel bad.
Well, no, I mean, that is a part of it. The making people feel bad makes them go get gifts, even if they're late at doing it, Yeah.
And then if you do, and it's all, depends on relationship and the couple, or however many, if that's how you do things. If you set the bar too high one year, the next year you got to top it, and then you got to keep going more and more. And it's like
you've got a continually growing Dudley Dursley problem,
right? Like, not my last relationship, but I've been in those before. That just like after candles lighting the entire house, it's like, what the hell am I supposed to do? I'd rather just not.
Well, I mean, to the point Josh was making earlier, I always make the joke that Valentine's is Singles Awareness Day. And and though that's kind of jokey, like, it really can be depressing for single people to see couples just flaunt their relationships for a whole day. But on a more positive note, I've always tried to flip that notion around. So even though I consider it Singles Awareness Day, I turn it into a celebration. I dress up really nice and try to go get drinks somewhere, celebrate my singleness, and maybe I'll meet another single, sexy person instead of being bummed out that I'm single. It's all about mindset.
I mean, I've said my piece about it. Y'all hear about it next week, but suffice it to say, it's the dumbest holiday to ever exist.
Right. Well, since I know Adam and his wife both hate Valentine's, and Josh and I are both single and ready to mingle, what did you guys get up to this weekend instead of spending a bunch of money on flowers and chocolates?
Man, I jumped back into Final Fantasy 14 with both feet.
Oh yeah, Zach's playing that too, right?
All I've been playing with him, yeah, and like that's really all I've done this weekend, aside from getting this set up, and then dropping the ball on at the beginning.
Don't they have a couple like new classes and stuff?
Well, there's a new expansion coming out in the fall, so it's kind of gearing up towards that, trying to catch up to be ready for it when that comes out.
Right. Zach sent me a picture from I guess him playing the last couple of days, but it was a reference to when we used to play Magic the Gathering all the time, and I always liked the figure they have, a Johnny, which is the giant like buff tanky lion man. Yeah. He was like, there's a class that's just straight up a Johnny.
Oh yeah 100%.
So that's cool.
Yeah, I've really been enjoying it. Like, that's all I did for Valentine's Day. I was online with my friend Chris. You guys both know Will. And Zach, like the four of us just running dungeons, leveling characters and stuff. It was a great time.
Oh, see, well, that's what MMOs are all about, is like a new expansion drops and like 4 or 5 people get interested and they all play and have a good time for like 2 months until one of them drops out, and then it's like dominoes and nobody plays anymore. Which
is, it's kind of an ebb and flow thing. I mean, I've played this game on and off since, probably like 7-8 years now.
Right.
That's kind of before they did the Realm Reborn, like relaunch the game.
Right. That's kind of how I've been historically with World of Warcraft, and also with Monster Hunter World. Like, since it came out, like I always go back to Monster Hunter. I looked into, I didn't even request off, but I ended up having the entire weekend off work. So that was cool. Listened to a little bit of Rhythm of War. I'm slowly making progress in. But over the last like 2 days, I realized I really needed to get on top of the last season of The Expanse, which came out a few months ago, I think. So I watched the entire 5th season of The Expanse in like 2 days.
It's easy to do.
Yeah, it is. It's a very watchable show. And then I went and watched some UFC fights Saturday. Usman versus Burns. That was really good.
Oh yeah, you talking about listening to books. I'm making good progress in Mistborn, and I'm really enjoying it. Like, it's
Nice.
good.
Yeah, I think you had asked me, and I was one of the people that said, like, maybe for you should do Mistborn first instead of commit to the Stormlight Archives are just massive books. I mean, they're 1,300 pages a piece.
So what about you, Adam? What'd you get up to this weekend?
Man, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I played a little Death Stranding. I've started that game. I'm getting into that. It's a cool game. Grace and I watched a little Silicon Valley, and made some lasagna. Today's my daughter's birthday. Yeah, so there's that.
Well, happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday.
Space Princess.
I'm sure she's listening. But I'll tell her
If you're
that you all
Space
said
Daddy,
hello.
is she Space Daughter?
We're not. No. Moving on. Aren't we here to talk about other things?
We're here to do whatever the fuck I want.
Yeah.
No, yeah, we are. Sorry, I'm still getting on it. Space Princess. Yeah, so we're gonna talk about later in the second half. We've got STF CONline coming up. I'm really excited about that, but we're gonna have a guest on and we're gonna do a big discussion on that. As far as other STF news and kind of what's been going on the last month, we are edging closer to our goal of doing the Fly Free or Die campaign, which, I mean, there's no end to the enthusiasm I think that this group has to do that AP in particular.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, edging close enough to it that Adam decided to make a Discord text channel for it.
I didn't make it.
You didn't? Who did?
That was Zach, wasn't it?
No, Zach didn't make it.
Who's getting in our stuff and just making these channels?
I have to audit the server and see.
We've got a security issue.
No, yeah, we are getting close. But I think at this point we're making characters. We're in the character making phase of getting ready for it. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, well, I would imagine you in particular would be. You don't often get to play characters. Yeah, but you've got, I mean, obviously Weldy, but that's like a once a month thing. But you're playing in some other like non-recorded games, huh?
I am. And just I'm doing the Delta Green thing with you and Brian and a couple others, and then I'm playing in a game that Commodore from our Discord is running, a module that he's written himself that he's looking to publish, and so we're giving that a run, and it's been pretty fun.
Oh, that's cool. I knew you guys were playing that. I didn't know it was like something he was trying to publish.
Mm-hmm.
Shit, good luck. That's really cool. In other news, we had the Roll20 sponsorship for a good while, and that was awesome just to have a sponsorship period. And we've used Roll20 for a long time. But our sponsorship ran out, and then Zach started playing around with Foundry a little bit and started showing us that. So we're looking into maybe switching over and starting to use Foundry.
I think it's pretty likely that we're going to make that switch.
It looks cool, man. It looks really cool.
The it's really cool, the like visual and audio components that are just like easy to like layer in, and like being able to move closer to something and the volume automatically like goes up or down depending on your proximity to it. And he showed us it was like a nightclub or whatever, and all of us were just like, this is amazing.
Yeah, it had like moving colored lights and stuff. It's really, I mean, just the amount of customization and like immersive qualities to it, like, and just quality of life stuff. Like once you figure it out, things just make sense in it. So
like doors that players can open if they're unlocked.
That's crazy. You know how many problems we have with doors and desks at Southern Tomfoolery. And, at least some of that may be a thing of the past.
Yeah.
Though if it comes down to an engineering check to get one open, all bets
So
are off.
I see Vera in the chat mentions that it's an animated map, and I want to just articulate that it's actually not. Like, it's a animated light effect that you can put in place anywhere on the map. You know what I mean? Like, there are animated maps that kind of that are basically GIFs that just roll up under the grid, but this, you can like set different points to have light sources that do different things, you know.
Mhm.
It's
And like have them toggleable, like a day night mode to where certain light sources are only visible at night to
mhm,
like set a campfire.
yeah,
And during the day, it doesn't emit light because it's not burning. You switch it over to nighttime and boom, you've got light from that campfire and can set the distance and everything. It's so cool.
Yeah,
is. It's slick.
it's a lot of very intuitive small things that just like you weren't even thinking about, or we, I think a lot of the time weren't even thinking about, that
Mhm.
makes it's not necessarily something that will come through like the podcast process that you guys will benefit from, but the benefit will be our immersion. Like I feel like we all as players will be so much more immersed in the map, and it'll make that whole, our own level of involvement so much more attentive.
Mhm,
You know,
mhm.
and that I think is a benefit for the podcast. Like if
Well,
we're more immersed, like
and
it's
we
gonna
also
come through.
talked about, you know, for any potential streamed live games,
Yeah.
the visual component that we can add through that. So yeah, I think that's pretty big news, because we've been pretty diehard Roll20
I mean,
our
it served us
entire
well throughout the
existence.
years of
Yeah,
us
like,
using it.
Yeah, I mean, I
yeah,
very much appreciate Roll20, and it's gotten us to where we are. I mean, we wouldn't have been the group we are today without them. But you know, sometimes you want to check out other stuff, and having those features seems really cool. And I think we did vote, like we're all on board with at least
yeah.
trying it out.
Mhm.
So that's gonna be a lot of fun. So we also had this last month there was another STFU, and you guys hosted the Dice Crisis, right?
We did, yeah.
How did that go?
That was great. Those guys have a really cool perspective on the game, and it's cool to talk to them and pick their brain a little bit. And it just kind of capped off of a real strong series of STFU interviews. We don't have anything on the books right now, but that was like kind of the cap on a nice run of some interesting and fun interviews.
So we've hit the peak, huh? We're not doing STFU anymore.
Yeah, it's done. I mean, how can we top the Dice Crisis? Like they blew the ceiling away. So I don't know.
Well, hey, I'm gonna take a sip of my Crown Apple and cheers to the Dice Crisis. Thanks
There
for
you
being
go.
on STFU.
Cheers, guys.
The Dice Crisis breaks STFU.
But no, I actually, speaking of that, when I was procrastinating on doing prep for this TOMTalks last night, I actually listened to the whole Dice Crisis episode last night, and I did enjoy it a lot. And I really thought it was interesting that, whereas we started a podcast after we had already been playing games together for a good while and kind of knew each other's styles to some degree, like that didn't seem to be the case with the Dice Crisis. Like they talked about that they came in without any of them having, I guess, enough experience that they identified as like, I'm an RP person or I'm a combat person or whatever. And they kind of let the game mold them. They were a little more malleable in that way.
They did. And as I said, it gives a very interesting perspective to their show and to their game. So yeah, good stuff.
So the main topic for the first part for the evening in general is flashbacks. And actually, it's funny because John just did an intro on flashbacks, which is funny, but that's kind of what we're going to talk about with flashbacks being a staple of STF, as well as I think a lot of actual play podcasts, and as far as John, I've got to give him a big shout out on this because he's had some killer flashback scenes lately with his character.
He really, really dug in to the flashback scene when it comes to Kuiper. I mean, he wrote a book, y'all. He did. He's got a novel on it, but I mean, it's good, and you know, I think it works for Kuiper specifically because he's coming in so late into the story. You know, when he came in, he was 7 levels, so there's 7 levels of story there. That's
right.
We're telling, you know.
Well, and that's kind of one of the things that I think is interesting about that is that, you know, everybody but him, you know, none of our characters had died or anything. So those characters had already been doing flashbacks since the beginning. And as cool as flashbacks are, like, you know, eventually you've kind of, that well runs dry to some degree. So it was nice to have a new character come in and kind of reinvigorate the flashback thing. After we had already kind of told a lot of our stories, to have a new story in there was very cool.
Yeah, I agree. It was nice to have a character to do flashbacks for, because like, you know, we had told a lot of y'all's backstories already in the first season. So
right.
Yeah, I mean, not much for Fell, but that being said, like, Fell kind of had a simple life leading up to this. You know, his background has been told mostly through, I mean, the events in Signal of Screams so far.
yeah, I mean, you had some flashbacks, but yeah, you just didn't have. Fell is a character that doesn't have a dramatic past. You know what I mean? Like, he's gotten his skills that he has through just the hard work that he's done and the life that he's lived. And he's the kind of greenest of the APA, or he was, you know, at this point, he's become a pretty hardened, you know, battle ready mechanic, you know?
Yeah.
But that was your arc was so much more in the present, you know, than the past. And I think that's where so much of Fell developed, you know, is in the present.
Yeah. Well, and there's an interesting kind of balance there. Like, I feel like people come at flashbacks in a lot of different ways based on like not only your play style, but like how you go about building characters. Cause you know, people like me, like John, that love to like write a 3-5 page backstory coming into a character. Well, hey, you've got a bunch of stuff to do to base flashbacks around or whatever. But whenever you run out of that script, you know, like you've either got to improvise or just like, all right, well, we've told it all. You know, so it's the kind of thing I can understand the mentality that a lot of GMs have, where they don't want you to do that, where they want you to develop in the present and focus on the current narrative. And then if we can come together and figure something out, that's cool. But you know, there are a lot of GMs that don't want you to come with a novella written. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I've even made the argument against coming with something that deep. The main thing really is that if you do, you just have to be willing to bend it and shape it a little bit based, you know, with the GM, because the GM's trying to tie you into it, you know, and there's some things that the GM is going to know that you as a player won't, you know, and so there's like, hey, if we just kind of shift this angle a little bit, we can really bring you in hardcore to the main thread of what y'all will be doing, and so we can actually get into it, you know.
Right. I mean, I think that's kind of the key, is like being adaptable in general, whether you bring in a long backstory or don't bring in one at all. It's all about like, okay, well, how can we make this character, how can we graft it onto the current situation and the current narrative? So, you know, neither one of them is like an inherently wrong way to do it, but I can't, like, I personally, like playing Mike, like having come in with the big backstory that I did. We did a bunch of flashbacks with Mike, and then coming into Signal of Screams, it was like, well, shit, I kind of told my story. So I guess, you know, I'll take a back seat, let other people tell their stories now, you know, and I can tend to feel a little like lost in that regard at times, just because it's like, oh, okay, well, I went hot out the gate with the flashbacks and the backstory elements. And
But I mean, that's okay. I mean, because like we're playing a campaign that goes from level 1 to 20, so there's
right.
that spotlight shift is going to move around several times throughout that, and Mike and his backstory and his connection to the Aslanti really carried a lot of the early APA arc, you know what I mean? And now it's like, okay, we've resolved the Aslanti, and now you're much more being developed in the present by your relationship to the APA and what it's becoming, and then the corruption, of course, that's causing you the grief that it is, and so it is interesting sometimes how that shifts to where it's like, okay, there's a story I want to tell that's bringing the past into relevancy to the present, and then there's who am I becoming in the now,
Yeah. Well, and a big part of that also is having a new crewmate, like back to John's character Kuiper. That is a way in which all of us as a party, but Mike in particular, is like being shaped and molded in the present is by his reactions to this new character, and by the flashbacks that he's getting and sometimes revealing to us, And speaking of John, I did want to say we actually wanted to have John on tonight because he's done such a good job with his flashbacks and he's so interested in telling that story of Kuiper. But he had a good friend coming in town, and we didn't want to have him have to make him divide his time like that. But again, I wanted to give a shout out to John, like, and if you're listening to this in the future, John, like, you're crushing it, and we love you and hope you're having a good time.
Well, so flashbacks in general, can I just like tell you where, like, why I'm so into doing them?
I mean, I already know the answer to this.
No, man, don't need to hear it.
All right, cool. We'll move on. What you got, Heath?
Time for intermission.
Well, I mean, I did have a little bit about like kind of flashbacks in general, which, just as a general technique of storytelling, like flashbacks have a long history in literature and in film, and now podcasts.
Right.
But they've become kind of ubiquitous in film and TV, and to the point that it's easy to take them for granted and overlook like how powerful they can be and how much of the heavy lifting flashbacks do in some of our favorite stories. Because like you think of like your favorite, particularly TV shows, and even back in the day, like detective stories really utilized a lot of flashbacks for for how they built their narratives. But we're so used to it that, sometimes you don't even think about it. You expect them. And sometimes you'll, if you're starting a new show and they don't have flashbacks, you can even have a sense of disappointment because we're so spoiled to having good flashbacks with shows like
Lost.
That's the one. Yeah.
Capital L, capital O, capital S, capital T.
I know, Adam. I was like joking when I said no. Like, I do want to hear why you like them. Is it because of Lost?
Well, it's a huge reason.
Okay.
And I'll say that Lost to me is so clearly influenced by Stephen King, who is also very much uses flashbacks to characterize, like, and that's the type I very much like that specific style of flashback, to where it's like there's a character having a moment in the present that triggers a memory or a relationship to the flashback that makes both of them more poignant.
Yeah.
Like what's happening in the now bounces back, echoes back into the flashback, and then the flashback echoes into where their mindset and why they're about to make the decision they make, or why this is affecting them in the way that it is,
Right. So I mean, in terms of like in technical terms, if you're talking about Stephen King, you're talking about books, not so much TV shows until later. Like, and I was, digging as the English major I am, but like flashbacks originally in literature are called analepsis. And there's two different kinds. There's internal analepsis, which tells you about an event that occurred earlier in the narrative, whereas external analepsis, which is what you're talking about, tells you about an event that occurred prior to the narrative. And that's what Lost did so eloquently so much of the time, was external analepsis, external flashbacks, and what Stephen King has done a lot of the time as well. And I think also in terms of podcasts, you almost exclusively see external analepsis,
Mhm.
flashbacks to tell the story before the story, instead of, because there are great ways in film to have an internal flashback, and like, especially like detective, crime noir thrillers, stuff like that, where, oh, I missed this detail earlier in the story that we're telling, and now I know who the killer is,
Mhm.
but
Right.
that kind of thing doesn't happen as much, hardly ever, I would say, in podcasts. Like, so much emphasis on flashbacks in podcasts is that external analepsis of, tell me the story of your character, years before we ever started doing this podcast, before this story started being told.
Right. The only one of our characters that I think that wasn't that style was Zeno, right? Like Zeno kind of had some of that, like, oh, this detail that happened here.
Well, Zeno had both.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Um, yeah, I like, as I said, Stephen King lost that style of flashback, and and characterizing a moment while doing development for a character. It's just something I love so much, and I think it works so good for the TTRPG space, because it's a way to get those cool backstories into the game without forcing an awkward conversation that probably wouldn't happen in real time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Right. Well, and one of the things I love about flashbacks in podcasts in particular, as opposed to TV shows or films, is when a flashback is going to happen, say in a movie or a TV show, there's all these visual cues that it's going to happen.
mhm,
Like the edges might get dark, or it might, look like you're looking through water or something like that.
Hmm.
And then your brain's like, oh, okay, this is a flashback to an earlier period in
Like
time.
colors are muted or something like that.
Yeah.
right.
There's great examples of like, you know, uh, going to black and white in a flashback or something like that.
Mhm,
So that's how it's done in film and television, is with all these visual cues. That is a very subtle and smart way that your brain decodes that. But one thing I love so much about podcasts is that, being in a podcast, it is not only the story that you're telling, it is you guys playing the game that is telling the story that you're telling. So like, there's something unique about that, in that, like, think about our doodly doos, right? We don't all know what's about to happen with this flashback, and it's not just seamless, like the story is being told and then a flashback is happening. Like, we get the chance to stop and be like, okay, I'm gonna need some doodly doos, and then everybody gets so excited, like, oh, what's about
Yeah.
to
Everyone's like,
come,
oh,
that
yeah,
that
whose
that
is it?
that kind of experience is something you don't get out of watching a TV show or a movie. Like, you might get excited, but you don't get excited together and have that mystery of like, ooh, whose flashback is it?
right, right.
I
That
think there's
that
something,
flashback in the moment type deal.
right. I just think there's something really unique about the podcast medium in terms of flashbacks, that it's a very unique kind of joy that we all get together, that's very different from reading a book or watching a flashback in TV.
Hmm. I agree.
Same.
That's why I do it. That's why I like them.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm actually curious, Adam, is there any reason that you don't like them or you would choose not to do them?
Okay, so I think that they have the risk of becoming self-indulgent. I think they have the risk of becoming too spotlighty on one character. So like, we have a pretty good cast of players here who all want to contribute to their characters in one way or another, however they do it, right? And so like, Mike has a great string of flashbacks, and then Heath might not have something, but then Ziva, Emily has something good for Ziva. Like, there's always something churning with our table. And that might not be the case at every table. Not, there, you might have a table of people that don't have the time or the inclination to want to like write out these flashbacks, these scenes, and like really are like dig into the RP of these big moments of their past. And so that could generate that kind of star player thing that you want to try to avoid at a table.
Main character syndrome.
Right. And so there's that. And then again, you can run the risk of becoming self-indulgent. We've had some flashbacks that go 15 minutes. I would say that that's typically too long of time to spend on something that happened prior to what you guys came to the table to do. You know what I mean? Like,
So
John.
by self-indulgent, you mean like for you as a GM, or
well, it
for us
depends
as a
on who's
podcast?
writing them, but anybody who's
for the player.
writing a scene and it's like getting really into it, you're opening yourself up to some self-indulgence because it's about a singular character, or it's about the GM's awesome writing, or
Kind
whatever.
of like hogging the spotlight, I guess.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and the thing is, like, it may not even be something you're doing intentionally,
Sure.
like, because it's easy to get wrapped up in your story. I'm someone who has to check myself on main character syndrome constantly.
No,
No, you don't say.
no.
Yeah. All right.
Titanium Mike and the
Okay.
Apollo Protection Agency.
All right. You don't got to be a dick. I'm trying to actually say something here. But no, it may not be the kind of thing that's intentional. Like just that level of enthusiasm that you have for your character can lend to that sort of self-indulgence, because when you're writing about your own character, inevitably you're trying to express like what it is you love about this character concept that you've created. Right. So in a way it's like, all right, well, let me spend this time to make you understand how badass this is,
Right.
And
I'd say another thing that I've experienced that is kind of a pitfall when it comes to flashback stories, in particularly the way that we do them, to where we do want the flashbacks to be relevant to what's going on in the main story. That I've got a whole corkboard up here of trying to connect John's building flashback story thread into the main thread, into the shadow party thread. Like, you're opening yourself up to a lot of narrative
loose ends you have to tie up.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, Lost, as much as I am inspired by them, they're also a warning to me about not going too far out there with all these different strands, because eventually you're going to get to a point where you can't tie them off because you have too many going. And so that's something that you want to be very mindful of and careful of.
Yeah, well, and kind of back to the point you were making, Adam, about your table composition. Like as you said, our group of friends at our table, like we all are pretty invested in our characters, and it allows us to, like, this week this character will get a flashback, and then 3-4 weeks later, or 3-4 episodes later, another will, and it rotates like that, so it doesn't get too focused on one character. But I mean, there are plenty of tables, and there's nothing wrong with this, that are like half the table are just like hardcore min-maxers, or like just only combat focused kind of people that don't really feel comfortable with RP and stuff. And then the other two might be fucking theater majors,
Right.
and then that can make it a little unfair, where it's like, okay, well, these two are far and away the main characters, and they've got a flashback every 2 weeks, and it's just a balance that can really seesaw one way if you don't check it.
I mean, it's a balance, like anything, I suppose. You just gotta you gotta work it through your table, and it's got to be a table type deal. And I think for us it's worked because, well, each player at the STF table has a different level of engagement to the flashbacks, like how much they write of it, or how much of it is a back and forth, or how much is of me writing it. That's different for each player. But one thing that we've all kind of agreed on is what the general idea and format and purpose of the flashbacks are, and kind of like understanding that there'll be times that we'll have to edit, clip some stuff out because it's not really relevant to what we're doing right now, those
Right.
types of things. So,
well, I will say, doing the little bit of research on flashbacks I did leading up to this, it was actually really cool, because going in is like, I mean, I know what flashbacks are. Like, it's not a difficult concept. And inevitably I always do that. I start researching and I get way more interested than I thought I was to begin with.
Mhm.
but it really stoked that little English major flame in my heart because like just stories in general are such a uniquely human like construction, and they're like so vital to all of us, whether or not we identify as writers or storytellers. Like we all tell stories constantly, even if we're not good at it. And thinking about flashbacks just makes me realize like how amazing stories are as a whole, particularly fiction stories, but how something as simple as interrupting the chronological flow of a narrative and inserting a little tidbit from the past can be so amazingly impactful sometimes. Like
It
that.
can be it can be revelatory. It's
Well,
like you.
it can be
Mhm.
what the show is, like
Yeah.
in TV shows and stuff. Like, I don't think I really would have cared about Lost that much if it weren't for the flashbacks.
Well,
You
that
know?
Yeah,
was like
sure.
integral to the fabric of the show. Like each episode, you're like, whose episode is this going to be? And what are we going to focus on? What personality trait or event is going to peel back the mysteries of this island even further, and like they hooked you so good with that. Like to me, that was the propelling momentum is like, whose flash are we gonna see next? Whose episode is this gonna be? And then on a more macro scale, something like Stormlight Archive, each book has a particular character that
Character
has a
focus.
flashback arc through each book, and it's like, oh, that's one thing I'm looking forward to every time a new book is coming. Is who's getting the flashback this book, which helps contextualize the entire vibe of that part of the story, like
Right.
with Mike in the boxing, right? That contextualized the whole third part of season one. Is bringing the boxing into Outpost Z. Like that gave that its own flavor because of say this is the flashback or the part of the backstory anyway that we're bringing forward to the moment.
Yeah, I mean, if you were to take the same circumstances, the same events in game that we actually played without the flashbacks, and just said that, yeah, Mike is a professional boxer, was, almost champion, and left it at that, those fights still would have been neat, but wouldn't have held nearly the impact that they did, or they wouldn't have had nearly as much weight to them, I guess.
And like Gardenzio in
Mm.
Signal of Screams, like the whole table knew the significance of Gardenzio showing up at New Elysium because of the flashbacks, rather
Versus
It
than
was
just
a
Heath
dump
knowing,
of,
being like,
yeah.
oh, this is somebody from my backstory. Oh, cool. And everybody's like, oh, okay,
yeah,
who's
like
that? Like,
I don't give a shit. Right. I mean, yeah, I don't know. Flashbacks to me are so I get that they can, there are ham-fisted ways to do them, and that there are shows that have in the past like relied on them too much and thought that could carry them and didn't necessarily, which I'm not referencing Lost. Lost was amazing. But it just really, again, it makes me realize like that writing fiction in whatever way that you do it is a building process. It's intentional. It's a construction project. And
mhm.
that is like such a cool tool that you can use in the construction of your story. Like it made me think, I wish I had been, 3,000 years ago, the first guy who ever thought to use a flashback, like, because I mean, there's examples of flashbacks or analepsis rather, as far back as the ancient, Indian, Sanskrit, the Ramayana, like
Mm,
ancient Indian works that are pivotal to their culture have examples of flashbacks in them.
yeah.
Like it's not a new concept. But could you
Wait,
imagine
we
being?
didn't invent flashbacks?
We did not. All
Damn.
right. You're.
I thought that was Family Guy.
I get that you're a method actor, but you really need to back off of Weldy a little bit. But
I
yeah, I
got the
mean,
beanie on and everything,
I see that. I see that. But
It's
yeah, I mean,
cool.
it's just such a cool tool to use, like, because flashbacks are one of the most effective ways to inject like a massive amount of meaning and understanding into a character situation in such a short amount of time. Like generally flashbacks, I mean, granted, Lost did a shitload of them, but generally they're like a few minutes long thing or a few pages long thing within a much larger work. So
Mhm.
something that small to do so much work and so much of the heavy lifting. is, I mean, it's just astounding.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I like me some flashbacks.
And I mean, there's plenty of stories that are very linear that have no need of flashbacks and are very well done. But thank God that tool is there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just something as simple as interrupting the chronological order of a story to do as much as it does in our own game, even, is so cool. I was going to ask you, Adam. One of the sort of impactful things about flashbacks is not just the added backstory, but the insight we gain about a character who just had a flashback in the current narrative present. So as a GM, do you find it difficult to know when to initiate a flashback? Like, I feel like I know you have like a general idea of like, I know I'm going to do it this episode, but like, does pulling the trigger on it ever like paralyze you or become difficult?
I mean, generally, I'd say no, but there's definitely been some instances where it's like it feels like it's a real hard pivot from what's happening in the moment.
Right.
You know, it's like I had to like be like, okay, stop doing what you're doing. Hey, we're gonna do a flashback here. And those types of instances are not my favorite. You know, like I feel a little disruptive in that regard.
Mhm.
Most of the time, though, I can place the flashbacks in a place where it's appropriate because I'm working with the person whose character's flashback it is to be like, hey, here's kind of a general idea of how this is going to relate, and so they're working with me back to like make it a little bit more plug and play, you know. And so, like, I'll use Zach's Evelyn story. You know, when he mentioned he wanted to tell that story in his flashbacks, I was like, okay, well, you know, how are we going to get this in there? Because there's nothing really that's going on in the main story that's going to connect directly to Evelyn, right? But he had mentioned also that he was wanting to improve his weapon, you know what I mean? And his weapon is named Evelyn, you know. I was like, okay, well, that's where we're going to start. So I took something as simple as like a just a regular upgrade that you can usually hand wave in 30 seconds of chatter, you know, like, okay, cool. Yeah. Your hunting rifle is now a level 7, you know, whatever he has now. But it's like, wow, no, let's stop and like, let's have your gun be taken away from you a while. So you're thinking about it. And we're wondering as an audience, why is Evelyn even inscribed on this gun, you know? And so it gives us that kind of in to launch the flashback as an example of how I connected a story to what was going on live and tried to make it seamless, you know.
Yeah, to have
Right.
a smooth segue into it as opposed to ham fisting it.
Right. Well, and I mean, the thing about flashbacks that they do so well is provide context, right? Like, I mean, yes, they provide you with additional narrative, but a lot of the times that's when you find really masterful pieces of flashback work is when, for instance, like Zach had that gun forever, you know, and we hadn't put that much thought into like how much it meant to him until we find out the backstory and why it's named Evelyn. So something that had already been there this entire time, you get a whole new level of context
Mm-hmm.
that's it's just really neat, guys. Flashbacks are just neat.
But yeah, I mean, there, you know, you get, it is something that I spend a lot of time thinking about, Heath, you know, to
Right.
get back to your question. It's I try to make it seem effortless,
Right.
but it's not always that way, you know what I mean? But I think with a little give and take from GM and player, you can get there together, you know, and that's generally been the case. There's only been a few times where I've been like, okay, this just doesn't work right here, you know, we can maybe come back to it later or whatever, but this has no spot to exist right here. And that's only happened like a couple times over
Right.
the course of all the episodes, you know.
Well, that was kind of my next question. Was I was going to say, obviously you communicate with the players leading up to a flashback, but that said, even when you know one's coming up, are there situations where the player whose flashback is approaching has messed up your plans for when to do so? Like you fully intended, like, all right, we're doing this flashback this episode, and then the player does something that
So
screws it up or delays it.
it's more like the group will, you know what I mean? It's I can't say that I can think of a time that the player whose flashback it was supposed to be did something that was like, okay, well, now we can't do your flashback, dummy.
Yeah.
Why'd you do
Well,
that?
generally they're in on it too.
Yeah.
You know.
But there has been several times where the group has gone away from my flashback trigger point, you know, like the most recent example is the last flashback that we had. And I'll try to keep this vague for people who aren't caught up, but the last flashback that we had was supposed to happen several episodes prior. Like I had it pulled up ready to go for like episode 105, you know.
Really?
Yeah, but you know, it's we're on a map here that you guys can go any way that you want, and I do try to give you guys as much possible agency within a very railroaded AP as possible, you know. And so it was like, okay, well, we're just going to push this till they circle back around to it, you know, and that's fine, you know. Like it would have been weird to try to force it in once you guys had moved away from it, you know. And so what I did do is talk to the player whose flashback it was and say, hey, okay, we missed it this week and this is why. Eventually you'll just, you know, you'll get back to where we can launch it and be good to go, you know.
So with flashbacks, like you mentioned the term trigger point, which I mean, generally throughout the history of fiction, if a flashback occurs, there is a trigger that made it happen. So like, I feel like that would be more complicated. Granted, I don't GM a lot. I feel like that would be much more complicated for someone who is GMing as opposed to like a writer who can just
who can
do whatever
your
you want
characters exactly where you want them to be.
So does that ever like, is that something that stresses you out, or is that something that you're like you're constantly looking for, or like what is the appropriate trigger? And have there been times when you just couldn't find the right trigger and just had to do a flashback anyways?
Yes, and yes. So
okay.
Yes, it stresses me out.
Go on.
Of course it stresses me out, you know, because I don't want the flashbacks to ever feel forced, even though it's okay if sometimes they're just there because I just got to squeeze them in. But like I go with the intent of trying to not have a forced flashback, you know. But in the times that I've come to, or it's like, okay, we got to get this piece of information out there. Sometimes I'll just start an episode cold with a flashback and just be like, hey, we're coming into this episode with the flashback. I think I've done that twice, you know, and it's like, I'm not going to wait for the trigger. We're going to start. This is going to be the opening vibe. The cold open to this episode is a flashback, you know?
Right. Well, and that's a smart workaround too, because instead of like having to seek, like triggers could be so many different things. You know what I'm saying? It could be something as simple as like you see an object you had in your childhood in the store of in the window of a store, excuse me. Or it could be a conversation or whatever. Like there's so many things that can be triggers, but you can't really influence them that much to like get the trigger that you want. So I think that is a smart workaround if you do the cold open flashback, but it does make a statement. It says like, hey, then it's like the reverse. It's instead of looking for a trigger, it's implying like, hey, now we've done this flashback, be looking for something that's going to happen with that character.
Yeah, that's relative. You know? Right.
So then it's like reverse trigger hunting, you know?
Right. Yeah, I mean, you know, it's always, I mean, GMing is juggling a lot of balls at once, you know. I mean, it's you just, and being okay with them dropping, like that's the thing. Like you got to be okay with letting them hit the ground and scooping them back up and see what you got now, you know, like, because that's going to happen. I mean, that's so much of so much of the main thrust of the story is dependent on dice and is just dependent on each of y'all's mood that night that we're playing. And like, there's just so many factors that are completely unavailable to me during my prep phase. You know what I mean? Like that I have like a lot of general options and hope that we get close to one. You know what I mean?
Right. You just cast several wide nets.
Yeah.
These heathens over here.
I know. Can't
chuckling at you, ball juggling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like we all agree. I think we're all unanimous. And I think probably everybody in the podcast is unanimous about like how vital flashbacks are and how cool they can be, both through the media that we've seen in the past and through playing the game that we are. But I do think that doing an actual play podcast, it kind of, I hesitate to say this forcefully, but it kind of forces flashbacks on you. Like that's a technique that you almost have to use in this type of game and this type of media because it's not visual, because you can't show the flashbacks and you are intentionally creating characters that are supposed to come from somewhere and you're supposed to open that up as time goes.
Mm-hmm.
And because they're so long, the stories are so much longer than a movie or a lot of TV shows, you know?
Yeah, I personally, I don't think that they're absolutely necessary, but they definitely add a lot of flavor to the show and make it a lot more entertaining and more enjoying to listen to, or enjoyable to listen to.
I guess I was overdoing it saying it forces you to do it. But I think if you want to tell a story with a TTRPG in the way that we do, that is such a valuable tool that like you almost, at least from the storytelling perspective, like for you to not utilize it is like tying a hand behind your back, you know?
You know, I'm just going to devil's advocate this just because, you know, even though I'm firmly on the side that flashbacks add a great deal to an actual play podcast, I do think that there is that it depends on the type of story that you're trying to tell, right? You know, like we are very into the persons of our story. You know what I mean? Like that's just all of us. One reason that we've all become such close friends and like is we share a similar taste for the types of stories that we want to consume. But there is another story that is very much this is the present, this is what's happening, and it's in like there's a whole belief that the most interesting thing that happens to a TTRPG character should be what's happening at that moment in the game, because they're progressively getting better, stronger. You know, their most impactful part of their existence should be the game that you're playing, because that's the point, you know, like, and I think there's an argument to be made for that there's a different way to tell a story that's more about propelling characters based on what they're reacting to in the adventure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm not disputing that at all. Which is why I said, if you want to tell stories in the way that we want to tell stories, which, you know, many of us are like humanities people, particularly, you know, me, you, and Zach, and, you know, the humanities are very character driven as opposed to plot driven as much, you know? So, and we all like characters. We all like to dig into our characters. So, I mean, that's kind of the point I'm making. It's like, if we want to, the kind of stories we want to tell, we want to be really, really invested in our characters and have, you know, events unfolding both from their past and their present. And in that goal, it's just such a huge tool. It's such a huge boon to have flashbacks in your story. I'm not saying you can't have a good podcast without flashbacks, because you can.
It's just a different type of story, you know.
Yeah,
it's much more like a story that's built strictly on forward momentum, and like, you know, I am on this adventure because I didn't have a life before this, you know, like this is the life that I'm choosing. This is the my destiny that I'm going to seek, as opposed to having this tragic past that influence. You know what I mean? Like, anyway.
Oh, hey, that's Fel.
Yeah, yeah. That's why you don't have very many flashbacks, but that's okay. You know, I guess that's what I'm saying is like, that's okay.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, like I've thought about writing more or some backstory with his history with the Eclipse and all that, but like I don't know. Like it doesn't seem. I guess it does feel like it'd be indulgent and like trying to shine a spotlight that doesn't need to be shown because it's already been told
Well,
and
don't
shown
worry,
through
folks.
the game.
Don't worry, folks. Next episode 107, you're gonna get a lot of
Yeah.
Fel characterization.
Oh, it
Right.
was so fun.
You
So
guys,
good.
you guys, I can't wait for y'all to hear episode 107. It's so much fun.
Well, I do have written here, Josh. I had a couple questions for you, and it was to the point that we're already making. I was going to ask, like, as a player, do you like to write flashbacks? I know we kind of mentioned that Fel doesn't have a lot, but I wonder, like, to what degree is that because you want to play a character that's kind of doesn't have this tragic backstory that kind of lives in the present or whatever, or do you is writing flashbacks something you enjoy doing or not enjoy doing? Because it's, I mean, that is your prerogative and it's fine either way.
Yeah, for me, it's honestly difficult to want to write one because as a player, I personally would rather have my character's story come out while I'm playing versus something that I dictate and choose and potentially lock myself in on some details versus, I guess, being a little bit more flexible and potentially being usable by the GM if they need somebody or a character for a certain thing, or there's a story beat that they want to try and fit that fits my character, they can make that happen. That if I'd written something different, might not work. So partially, to be honest, it's difficult for me to try to sit down to write something compelling without feeling like I'm blowing smoke up my own ass or my character's ass.
That's I kind of I've always gotten that vibe about you, and like part of me hates it. Like I wish you would like fucking do it. Just write a dope ass flashback or a dope ass backstory. Because like I totally understand like wanting to be malleable and usable by the GM and not wanting to cut off any avenues of them. But I don't want you to be too malleable, you know, like fucking do something you're really interested in, you know, in terms of backstory and stuff.
Well, who knows? Likely not with Fel, but future characters. We'll
Get
see.
that juicy gloom bot flashback.
Get that D.
Well, again, to Josh, like we mentioned that you've your flashbacks as Fel have been fairly sparse compared to other members of the party. And I know you know you want to kind of be flexible and tell the story in the moment, but do you have some more like nuggets of backstory saved up you've been hoarding for later? Or
like I have some moments. They're not like written out, but I have a couple of moments, but it's really just a matter of if they ever become relevant, you know?
Right.
And if they don't end up being told by playing the story, you know?
Yeah. Okay. I was just
I
curious.
think that I know those moments, and I think that they have definitely influenced how Josh plays Fel.
Oh, for sure.
Like it definitely, while it might not have like all the pizzazz that a dedicated flashback would require, those moments are very important to who Fel is, and is seen through the way that Josh characterizes Fel. So
I mean,
a lot of that plays into, as I said, you'll see in next episode 107 of how I improvise that interaction is based off of what I know of Fel's history that seems innocuous on paper, but like gives all sorts of room to just kind of play with, you know?
Well, and that's the other thing too. Like those story beats have acted more or less as a seed for how I'm playing the character. but having those explicitly told as a flashback to me feels like, I guess, unnecessary, because they do, or because Adam is in on it and has done a great job of helping me, I guess, show those through Fell's actions, you know, and having those seeds to, you know, kind of fall back on as far as where he came from, and more of a backstory than, you know, flashback moments.
Yeah, it feels like, and I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but it feels like you're saying you're almost like afraid of the permanence of a flashback.
Oh, yeah.
Like that like, hey, like this is an idea I have that has been kind of foundational to how I play, but maybe the things around that moment can still be amorphous in my head, or in terms of how the GM wants to use them. Yeah, I mean, I can totally appreciate that. And that's one of the interesting things about a backstory versus flashbacks. Like, especially people like me and John that write big, long backstories, like we know we're not going to get all of that in flashback form, you know, and even the stuff that doesn't come back and be told in a flashback, it still informs the way you play a lot. You know,
Absolutely.
and those can be really interesting, very special, and very personal to you, that you may, they may be things you never share with anybody, but like that is how you view your character and the actions that have influenced them in their lives. And that, you know, some of those things may never ever come out on the show, but have a vital importance to how you make your character's way in life.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, what a hefty and neat conversation.
That's been great.
It's just been so neat. So I think it's about intermission time. When we come back, we're going to talk about STF CONline. We've got our last part of this 3-month segment of trivia. So we can get our trivia out, tally up the winners, and give out a special gift, special prize. And then, as always, we're going to have listener questions. So stick around. We'll hit that intermission music for you, and we'll be back in just a little bit.
Yeah, right. This time it is actually going to be 15 minutes. So
a real 15?
And a solid exact, well, maybe not to the millisecond, but like
not
within
an
the second.
Arbitrary 12?
An actual fit, yeah.
15! 15!
All right, well, I'll see you guys back here in 15 minutes.
All righty. Welcome back. Hey guys, host, co-host, producer, former producer. What's up? It's been so long.
And a
One and the
guest.
same.
Yep.
And a
And
guest.
we have a special guest today. Our friend Matthew, you may know him as Viridux on the Discord, is here today to talk to us a little bit about STF CONline. How you doing today, good sir?
Doing good, fellas. How is everybody doing?
Great.
Good.
First
Good.
of all, before we get into this, Matthew, I just got to say thank you for your role in making this happen. It's a big project to undertake, and I really appreciate what you've done to kind of help facilitate that too. So thank you very much. Thanks for being on the show. Glad you're here.
You're
No
another
problem.
example of our skill at finding really intelligent, awesome people to do skilled labor for us for free.
Yeah.
Just wait. I'm gonna start charging you guys.
It's like, look, we pay you in Discord colors.
Oh, there we go. I'm up to 4.
Well, you are a Passo pal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you get at least the benefits of that.
Yeah.
True.
So welcome back, listeners. Like I said, we got Matthew here. We're going to talk about STF CONline. I assume being living in the Discord like I do that everybody knows about it, but that may not be the case. So like, why don't we break down what is STF CONline?
You asking me there, Heath?
Well, I was just hoping anybody would jump in.
Anybody will.
Oh, okay.
So it's a weekend of people playing games and people running games, and yeah,
Yeah.
we're hosting it.
Well, the idea comes from, we love tabletop playing very much, and we love our community very much, and we want to combine the two, and we want to. I think Matthew will probably touch on this shortly, but we want to create relationships to blossom the future so that more games can be played. And so obviously we want to put Starfinder in the spotlight because we're all ambassadors of this system. We really, really love it and believe in it and have a lot of time playing it, or have a lot of fun playing it. But at the same time, one of the beauties of this hobby is there are so many different systems and games to play. And so already we have several GMs that are going to come in and run some alternatives to Starfinder too. And so the bottom line is that we want to play games with y'all. We want y'all to play games with each other. And we want to just continue to facilitate our community around our shared hobby as much as possible.
And the dates are March 26th, 27th, 28th, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of slots that you can sign up to GM any of those days. How many slots do we have on each day?
Well, it varies on the day because Friday is a half day. Just because we assume that a lot of people are still going to have to work on Friday, so there won't be as much availability on Friday. So it starts at 1 and goes till 3 a.m. officially. Okay, so that being said, this is Southern Tomfoolery. I expect there to be several unofficial things happening over the course of the weekend. So on Friday starts at 1, goes till 3. We have roughly 9 slots, but that's all just continues to be dependent on the GMs that we have. If we end up getting more people available on Friday, we'll add more slots. It's kind of just creating the tables right now. One thing I will say is that STF, to kind of officially kick it off on Friday, is that we're going to actually do a live stream of a little one shot that I've developed for the STF cast, and it's called Assault on the Pools of Paradise. And so it's going to be this little module that I am putting together, and we're going to run the first part of it live on Twitch. And so it's going to be our first live streamed game. We're going to see how that goes. And in that's going to be from 6:30 to 10:30 Central. And within that, we'll also kind of just do some opening remarks to the weekend, all the type of things to say, hey, this is officially STF CONline or whatever. The cool thing about that is that that's only part one of the Assault on Pools of Paradise, and we've actually set up several different time slots to play part two, and that's where you guys get to come in and join in the defense against the Pools of Paradise for part two. So looking forward to that.
The defense against or the defense of?
The defense of.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're
The
defending
Pools of
against
Paradise
all
have been
the
corrupted.
all the employees of the Pools of Paradise.
Yeah. And so Friday, kind of a half day, Saturday, full day, right, Vera? We got like slots out the frame.
We got 21 different slots. I think we got 2 every 4-ish hours.
Oh, wow.
We also, it's pretty much nonstop TTRPG action. So
this is way bigger than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. That's amazing.
And then Sunday is another short day as far as slots. We're doing slots from 11 to 6, and then we have like a 6:30 kind of closing finale of the weekend that STF will do again on Twitch. So that is still kind of up in the air, the particulars of that third part, but Sunday is going to be kind of like a brunchy TTRPG. Imagine that a lot of people will be recovering from Friday and Saturday on Sunday. So, that's where we're at now.
I can't wait until the CONline in general, but I know there's one of those 3 days, me and Griff from Hideous Laughter are going to be up till 6 o'clock in the fucking morning.
Yep.
And
So
like,
don't give you the Sunday morning slot.
Don't put me in anything morning.
Anything before 1 p.m. Central.
Right. Which I will be GMing one of the sessions of part 2 of the Assault on the Pools of Paradise. I think 2 or 3 of the other members of STF will also be GMing some of those. So a lot of people will get the chance to do that.
Yeah.
And that'll be a good time. And I'm super nervous about it. I don't GM very much.
Well, okay. So to that point, I want to tell everybody that like the point of this is not to be the best GM ever, right? Like the point of this is for us to hang out with each other and explore these games and systems. And so like there is, I know I can say this as much as I want, but I'm going to say it anyway. There is no pressure when it comes to the GM. We're just want people to set up tables for people to sit down and play at. So if you have the interest in it, you got lots of resources here that can kind of help get you started. And don't be afraid to do it.
It's the exact same philosophy as TOMTalks. Like I messaged Matthew before we got on tonight, and I was like, hey, don't be nervous. No pressure. This is 90% us just hanging out. So it's the same kind of vibe with that. Like getting a game, GM a game, most of it's community building, hanging out with people, and you also get the added benefit of being able to play a little bit of TTRPGs. This is supposed to be a good time above all else. This is I think an important clarification. He asked, will all the part 2 scenarios be played from the same script, or will all of the player characters exist in fiction? I think it's kind of a confusing question a little bit, but Adam, will you tell us part 2 will be a continuation from part 1? It won't be just doing part 1 again, right?
Right. So part 1 will be introducing, all the STF players will be playing a different character. They won't be playing any of their APA characters. So they'll be playing people that work at the Pools of Paradise. And then my intent is that part 2, those become the key NPCs of part 2, and so then your players who are kind of working with the NPCs that were established in part 1 to continue the defense of the Pools of Paradise. And so as it stands now, they're all going to be operating off the same script, just because I'm not trying to write that much material for one weekend. I'm sorry, but
get it together, you lazy son of a bitch.
But I will say that like the idea is that all of you are helping to defend the pools of paradise. So while it might be kind of the same scenarios that are running through, each GM is going to run it different, and each GM is going to kind of have their own feel. But all of your characters did help protect the pools of paradise in canon. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So like,
He just followed up asking, will it be like one player party defending a certain corridor, another one defends another
No.
corridor?
No, it's all the same one shot run by different GMs. And I'm gonna tell you right now, get in my game because I'm gonna be the most fun and the least able GM.
Yeah, it's like, it's maybe that's STF Con 2, Sir Newt, but I just don't have the time to like organize 4 potential completely different parties and what they're going to do and how that all connects into like some continuity. That's just, it's not I'm not trying to bite off more than I can chew for this first one, and I feel like I already have by doing this Assaults on the Pools of Paradise, but we're gonna figure it out. It's gonna be fun, but
as is tradition, man.
Yeah, I'm trying to catch my limits early,
Well, let's table this for a second. Let's come back to STF CONline in just a minute, because now I feel rude because I completely did the beginning of part 2 of TOMTalks tonight in the wrong order. I was going to ask Matthew, since we've got him here, before we get back to STF CONline stuff, like, why don't you kind of, some of these people might know you, but if you want to introduce yourself, kind of tell us how you found the show, how you came to meet us and ultimately become an unpaid worker for STF.
Intern. They're called interns.
I don't mince words. I mince garlic.
Yeah, I actually, it's funny. It was just kind of spur of the moment. I was looking for podcasts. I found Starfinder, and I just plugged it into my podcast app, looked for, Starfinder app, Starfinder podcast, and found you guys. And I was like, dang, these guys are actually, they have great chemistry. And I had a lot of fun listening to you guys the first couple episodes. And you guys were talking about the flashbacks earlier. That was one of the things that really grabbed me. So found you guys, jumped on the Discord community, and I was really happy to see that it's a pretty active community, and a lot of folks that are super cool.
I mean, we had the great Veridu binge.
No, that's what I said. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but like you crushed the entire podcast in like, I feel like it was 4 hours. I don't even know I don't know how you bent space time to make it happen, but
it's a combination of probably about an hour and a half commute every day during the pre-COVID times. And man, I binged every single episode, made it to, I don't know, we were up to like 60 something by that point.
Yeah, it was like getting very close to the end of season 1,
Yeah.
You basically got there in time to be part of the season 1 finale party,
Yeah, I was hooked.
Impressive.
Needless to say, hooked. So I know there's somebody else, I think Alexia, who's doing the binge right now, and it's a lot of fun to watch them climb the numbers there.
Alexia has been crushing it as well. I don't know if anybody will top how fast you did it, because it was literally impossible to get through it as fast as you did.
Steve went in pretty hard on it.
Steve did too. Look, we were talking last episode or last segment of this episode, Josh doesn't feel great about doing flashbacks sometimes because he doesn't like to blow smoke up his ass too much, but I do. And that's one of the like greatest, most vindicating things for me to see. I'm not even you shush. But that's one of the most like vindicating things and most satisfying things for me as a person involved with this podcast is when you see somebody get that heavily invested that quickly and crush it that fast. It's like, I mean, it really, really makes it worth doing. Not that it isn't worth doing to begin with. We were already podcasting before we were podcasting, but
yeah, we were podcasting to ourselves.
But those are the things like, I always tell people like, don't get into podcasting for money, because that's not what's going to do it for you. But that's the real reward. I mean, obviously we have Patreon and stuff, but like emotionally, that's the reward, is seeing people like really give you that feedback, and then being just astounded by like, wait a minute, we were talking about episode 4 yesterday, and now we're talking about episode 20 or something. Like,
Well, and I think to take that further, to then become such a fixture in our community, you know, to where now you're helping us, like, not only did you enjoy what our idea and our vision is, but you're now becoming part of that vision and making it a reality. That's such an awesome step. And as I said at the beginning of this section, thank you for taking on that mantle, because if you guys didn't catch it, we're not paying this motherfucker anything. You know?
And he's doing a lot for us.
Not yet, guys. Not yet.
Yeah.
But soon.
Yeah.
He worked his way up the totem pole really quickly. Like, I don't doubt his ability to start weaseling cash out of us.
That's our $1,000 Patreon goal, is to start paying our interns.
There you go. Yeah, you guys give me a salary.
But yeah, I mean,
If you're not going to sign up for us, sign up for Matthew. Okay, like,
there we go.
But no, like, I think that's a really cool thing, is that not only did you really get into the show, but you're now on board the same train of us trying to
same
bring
rocket ship.
to bring Starfinder and gaming as a hobby kind of to as many people as we can. So what has that transition been like for you?
It's funny. It's not really all that much of a transition, simply because you guys have built a really tight-knit community. And I've had a lot of fun talking to the folks on there and just getting to know people. And it was funny just listening to you guys playing one day, and the idea sprung to mind, like, wow, I would love to play in a Starfinder game with some of the folks on here. And I think that's when I kind of reached out to you, Adam, and pitch this idea of kind of bringing this con online. It was just this notion that I really wanted to kind of bring the community together and make sure that we all got a little piece of the same fun that you guys have at the table and that you bring to us in podcast form every week. So
why don't you tell us a little bit about why we're signing your timesheets each week? What are you doing with your time here, your internship?
So most of it is making pointless charts in Google Docs that I get to show off to the gang every Sunday. Show them, hey, look, number got bigger. Yeah. The rest of it's really just making sure that the form is usable for you guys, so that whenever somebody wants to jump in and hopefully there'll be more after today, but if anybody wants to jump in on this little venture of ours, that it's super easy for you guys to do so. And we're hoping we'll have just as many, more than enough players to jump on each of these time slots. I even hear there's a Chuck Tingle RPG coming up for later in the evening.
That is completely off the record.
That's some of that tomfoolery, unofficial, stuff that Adam was saying was most likely going to happen, that we do not endorse nor condone.
Correct.
The real travesty is that neither you, Adam, or you, Josh, have stepped up to do a Sonic RPG one shot.
Bro, why would I do that when that's our
biggest
big
Patreon money goal, dude? What are you talking about?
That's our 50,000.
No, that's the teaser though. That's how we get them to start paying for it. You do it one time, and it's like a underground fish tape,
Give a little teaser of the Sonic RPG of what it could be.
Yeah, and I will make sure I am not in that game.
See, look at you.
I have no interest whatsoever in the Sonic RPG. So Matthew, thank you for being on first and foremost, but also thank you for all the work you've been doing between you and Brian, Old Scratch Johnson. Like, there's so much that you guys have allowed us to do that we wouldn't have been able to do without outside help. I mean, like, Fight Rock would not be a thing without Old Scratch Johnson, and STF CONline would not be near where it's at and what it looks like it's going to be a big, awesome event. And that is very much in part, due to the work that you've done for us. So we can't thank you enough.
Hey, my pleasure. And fingers crossed to big success. I'm sure that we'll be able to bring folks together. I'm stoked.
Yeah.
I am too.
So we've still got a little time though that people can sign up, right? For GM slides.
For sure. Yeah, I think can't remember the exact date, but we were looking at later this month closing off GM signups and then opening up players. Yeah, so the forum is over on our Discord. Feel free to jump on over there under the I think the STF CONline general discussion channel in the pins. Check that out. If anybody can't find it, feel free to ping me, or I'm sure one of these guys would be happy to point you in the right
Yeah.
way.
There is a banner linking to that as well on
the
our
website,
website, southerntomfoolery.com.
Are you, Matthew? Are you GMing a few things or anything at all?
Yeah, looks like I have 2 slots right now, one for Starfinder and one for Pathfinder 2E.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So,
How
Should be
many
fun.
things are you just doing, Adam? The Pools of Paradise stuff, or are you doing
I'm
anything
doing
else?
Pools of Paradise 1, and then I'm going to run a part 2 myself, and then I'm going to play. Like, I'm going to take this opportunity. It's my birthday weekend. I'm going to play. I want to play with.
Oh,
as
that's
many as
the
possible.
other thing is it's Adam's birthday weekend.
Yeah, 40th
gonna-
birthday, by
He's
the
gonna
way.
turn 72 years old.
This is the one. Like, I'm turning 40. Like, this is the one where you should like say my actual age because you can really bust my balls about it.
Yeah, I just went above and beyond. That's what I do for this show, you know. Are you GMing anything, Josh? Are you
I
just
haven't signed up
hanging
for
out and
anything yet
playing?
because reasons. But I do plan on looking at it and signing up for a couple of things. It'll be my first time actually GMing anything, so that'll be interesting.
Well, you did a great job on TOMTalks, you know, doing
I mean,
the combat for us.
That was one monster. I mean, I get I've played enough games to get the cadence of how it works in combat and stuff, but the actual rules lawyering is very different on the other side of the table.
Yeah, but one thing about running one shots is that the rules lawyering is like way less necessary.
It's a lot
you
more
know?
loosey goosey.
Yeah, like you just got to make sure everybody at the table is having a good time and like get them through the adventure. You know what I mean? Like, and I will say this because I'm sure somebody is thinking that these are not going to be actual society sanctioned games. That's something that we'll probably look to do next time we do this. But honestly, we want this to be as pressure free as possible, and we don't want to bring in like extra work for our GMs to try to get everything chronicled and everything like that. And we're just not at that position to make this a fully society sanctioned thing this time. You know?
One thing I wanted to add is if anybody's a new GM, if anybody's nervous about GMing, feel free to reach out to me directly. I'm more than happy to coach anybody through anything and work with them on you know, figuring out some rules, setting stuff up, getting things ready. And even, you know, mid game, if you're running into an issue, just DM me and we can figure it out. I honestly think anybody can be a GM and, you know, make sure that they're, you know, they get to have fun with some players at the table and make some new friends.
Well, I actually got to play in a game with Matthew pretty recently,
and Brian too.
Yep. You want to real quickly tell them what that was?
Yeah. So Paizo put together these really cool little short one shots. They're called bounties. We did one called The Cat's Cradle, and I don't want to spoil any because I think somebody might be doing a bounty, and I want to make sure I'm not spoiling their story. But it was a lot of fun. It was in Osiris, I think it was, but it was a lot of fun. We played with Sir Newt, Osirian, yeah. Played with Sir Newt, Porter Paladin, Brian, and you, Heath, obviously, and that was a lot of fun. It was really some quick encounters. It was a good way to get your feet wet with Pathfinder 2E. So, yeah.
Yeah. Again, the idea of this weekend for our first CONline is to have fun playing games together. That's where our head's at right now. You know, like we can expand this and make this a much more like organized thing, I think, next time. But right now we want our community to play with each other, and that's where we're going. So sign up. Let's do it.
Yeah, exactly. Be
Yeah.
there, be square. All right. Well, again, Matthew, thank you for being on and for all the work you do. I guess we're gonna let you get out of here. Stick around. We got listener questions coming up. So if you got any extra questions you've come up with in the experience of actually talking with us in person, like hit us up. We're gonna do them.
All right, thanks guys. I appreciate you having me. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks.
Yeah, appreciate you being here, man.
We'll see you. We'll see you. All righty. So very exciting, or at least I think so. We've got the third leg of our first run of trivia questions.
Oh, so this is the final round for this prize.
Of this leg, yeah.
Can we get some ham horns, Heath? I'm blinking that trivia time button.
Ooh, I can do that. I
Gotta
didn't
get
know.
it blinking. It's saying trivia time, trivia time,
Trivia time. Yeah.
There we go. Josh, do you have the scores?
Yeah, I do.
You
Okay,
better.
See. I do. I actually went back because I know the second or the last time that we did this, I was like, I don't remember about the first one, but luckily we're recording these.
So you went
So I was
back.
able to go back and listen and find. Currently, we have Nusheo with 4 points, Old Scratch Johnson with 2 points, Buster Knuckle with 1 point, and Pharasma Saves with 1 point.
All right. Well, Nusheo is not here tonight, so maybe you guys can. Maybe we got a steal in the works here. Okay, here we go. So it's three questions. Go for it, Heath. Let's get them going.
All righty. So the first question, the easy tier. All right. And this episode obviously was about flashbacks. So, there's implications there. First question, the easy tier is, which PC on Southern Tomfoolery had the first flashback of the show?
Here we go. And you guys got 10 seconds to answer.
Give it more than 10 because of the delay. I mean, 15.
Well, yeah, I'm 10 off of when they get it. You know what I mean? Like, we got to worry about the delay. They don't got to worry about the delay. It looks like we have our two winners nonetheless. Viridux and Terp, otherwise known as Egg.
Yep.
Got it in first with both of them answering correctly. Mike, Clueless, just missed it. But there you go. Mike had the first one, and that was what, Heath? What was that one?
That was the Aslanti invading the place where he was from.
Yeah, episode 4, the end of episode 4.
Last night getting ready for this, I went back and I listened to the first 8 flashbacks of the show.
Okay.
And that was a lot of fun. And that, like, to be as early as we were in the, not only the show's story, but the production value of the show, like those early flashbacks, the Mike one, and then, each of us had one after that in the next like 4 or 5 episodes or 10 episodes or whatever. Right. Like they all really, like, I think, tooting my own horn, I think they really, like, a lot of people have said that's like, that hooked them, those flashbacks really did it for them. Okay. So question number 2, the medium question. Who was the first non-PC to have a flashback? Who was the first non-player character to have a flashback?
The old NPC FB.
Non-player character?
Right, yeah, no, I'm sorry.
It's just NPC FB.
Yeah. All right, we got our first 2
we got
answers.
both of them, yeah.
We got,
that's quick.
We actually got 3 answers, and I'm going to read them because it's cool. First of all, Sir Newt, you're correct with Sedona. Old Scratch Johnson, I'm just going to give you a bonus point for Emily and the Pickles because that's hilarious. And then Sedona Viridux, that is correct with. So Sir Newt and Viridux, each correct with Sedona as the first non-PC to have a flashback.
All right. And the hard question. I had 2 questions I was torn on picking for this one, and I was really considering doing a 4th question just for 1 bonus point.
Do it.
All right.
I can't put that one up on the screen, but
That's what makes it a bonus
That's fine.
question.
It's a bonus question, right?
Right.
Okay, which I think the hard question for today is actually harder than the bonus question, which is hard. So question number 3 for trivia tonight, the hard tier. What planet did Kuiper experience his bloodiest day with the swarm? What is the name of the planet?
This is a tough one. Maybe not so tough if you've been paying attention, but it's quite specific.
I think it's super tough.
Yeah, it's a detail for sure.
I think it's the toughest goddamn trivia question anybody's ever seen.
Planet Swarm.
Planet Swarm.
Haven't gotten
Clueless
there yet.
hasn't gotten
Fair
there
enough, Clueless. Okay.
Planet Swarm sounds like a shitty like B movie, like a Richard. What is it? Richard Rodriguez.
We got Vesk 17. I think we might have stumped him here, fellas.
Well, then, if nobody gets the answer, we could sub in my bonus question and just make that the third question.
I mean,
Yeah, one of the
you
Vesky
got a
planets.
bonus question. Nobody got the hard question.
Right.
Let the record
That'll
stand.
be the bonus.
One of the Vesky planets, he says.
All right. So sorry, nobody got it. What's the correct answer there, Heath?
Kesta Vol.
Kestaval. Yeah, that was the planet that gave Kuiper so much trouble. All right, I'm curious what your bonus question is.
All right, so the bonus question it's for 1 extra point.
Yep.
Okay. What planet did the Aslanti invade when Mike was a child?
I think that is harder than this one. That was mentioned one time a long time ago.
It has technically been mentioned more than one time.
I don't think anybody's gonna get that one.
Hmm.
Look, we call it hard for a reason, y'all. You know.
Re-listening to episode 4 times 36 speed.
Be right back.
You better get it in 10 seconds, man. I think you stumped him on that one too, man.
Yeah, I feel like that. I'm glad that was a bonus question because I feel like it's a little tricky because Adam butchered the pronunciation of it when he first did the flashback. All right, so the answer is Najin Korazayas, or Najin K for short. That is the research facility that Mike. It wasn't even a planet technically, was it? Wasn't it just a research facility? I think we misnamed it as a planet to begin with, and then realized,
a
space station.
Got a little loosey goosey with the canon in that one.
But yeah, Najin Korazayas is where Mike was born and grew up until he was 8 years old, and the Aslanti invaded, and he was saved/kidnapped.
Yeah. So listen, the hard questions are hard for a reason. We don't typically expect most people to answer the hard questions. That's why they're the hard. So Josh, what is our totals?
So the totals, even though Nusheo isn't here, still has 4 points. Old Scratch got that bonus point this time. We've got 2 points for Veridux and 1 point for Egg.
Wait, so Old Scratch had how many? 3?
3, yeah.
3.
So
Okay,
you've got
Nusheo still wins?
Yeah, Nusheo with 4, Old Scratch with 3, Buster Knuckle, Pharasma saves, Sir Newt, and Egg with 1 each.
All righty. Well, I'm really excited to announce Nusheo, though he won't be able to find out till later, is going to get one of our brand new Dirty 30 t-shirts.
Oh, shit. What? We got a new t-shirts. Nobody told me that you guys were doing Dirty 30 t-shirts.
We told you we were going to make them without you because you wouldn't let us.
Yeah, the shirt's actually up on the stream now, or the logo for it is.
Yeah, and I just love that it's the 3 is just written over the 2 for the 20. It's real.
Now,
real
for those of you who didn't win this, if I remember correctly, is this going to be something that's sold on our store, or is this a Patreon reward?
I I'm pretty sure we're putting this one on the store, but
Okay.
We should, because
yeah, I
people
think
will
this,
buy
yeah,
it.
this is a good one, and I like it. Emily put this design together, and I do approve of this design, despite my hatred of Dirty 30s. I think it's hilarious. This is really really great. So Shaya is going to get one for free, and expect that to be on our merch store soon.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. And I will say, I wanted to give away one of the sweet titanium mic neck gaiters that I recently got one of, but when I found out that there was the Dirty 30 t-shirt option, it's like, all right, we'll do that.
Well, this isn't the last time we're doing the trivia stuff.
Yeah,
so
we start over. It's the board's clean.
Yep.
And so if you want to win, I mean, we're going to give away stuff, like real stuff. So if you want to win, show up for these TOMTalks, and it'll be the next 3 episodes, and then there'll be a winner at the end of the next 3. So that's how we do this.
Nice. All right, so guys, we've got one more thing left, and that's listener questions.
Sweet.
And I hate to do this, but I have to go pee. I'm not gonna make it through listener questions if I don't.
I tell
Let's
you
make
what,
the producer, since he had such a faux pas at the beginning, handle this bit while you and I go pee real quick. Josh, you got it.
all right, cool.
No, that's
Talk
not
amongst
fair.
yourselves.
That's
That's
not
fine,
fair.
man. I can talk to
No,
myself all day.
You just need to shoot the breeze for a second until we can come back and do listener questions.
All right, chat. How is everyone doing? Talk to me, because I've got a couple minutes to. Well, I don't know, probably 8 minutes for Adam. Because he's about to turn 40. He's still young and spry, so surely he won't take too long. So Newt, you're saying you're a little bit drunk. Actually, you know what? How would everybody feel about popping over to Discord afterwards to kind of talk? Due to this icy weather, I am remote working, which I don't know exactly how that works with airplanes. They don't fit inside my house, so not sure what I'm actually going to be doing. Maybe some paperwork. I think I've got an evaluation I need to do on somebody. I've got plenty I could take care of. Let's see. Verdox says, "Wish I could." Have
Oh, it's
Charlie
okay,
likes
Josh.
waking at 5. Oh no, I'm fine, man. Just
You're
you
doing
can
good?
keep going. I figured you'd be a while, being about to turn 40 and all.
All right.
I told him you'd be about 8 minutes.
That's
I mean,
unnecessary.
I don't know. You sure you're finished?
Oh, damn it.
Well, that's why I got my diapers.
Oh, man. Wow.
I love you, bud. Silence.
Do we have some good questions?
Yeah, we got some decent questions coming up.
Cool. What are you drinking?
This is a Dr. Pepper and Vanilla Crown.
Okay, that sounds
It's pretty great.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good. I mean, I like both of those things a lot. So
Yeah. Like, I was genuinely surprised at how good they mix or how well they go together. Good they go together? I don't know.
how together good they go.
Yeah, that.
Okay, so listener questions. Sorry, folks.
Yeah, sorry. When nature calls, I actually almost unplugged my computer. I tripped and almost busted my butt right here by the computer. Coming
It's fine,
back.
man. We would have finished the show without you. I'm gunning for host anyways, so.
I know he's trying to get.
You can't even handle producer. Get out of here.
Exactly. I'd be a better host. Not necessarily better than you. I'm just saying. Yeah, better than producing.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Wait till the next time Mike needs to in harm's way you on the show.
Come on, man. Player knowledge, character knowledge. Don't bring that in.
I'm petty.
Duh.
All right, so let's do this. Listener questions. What do we got?
All right. First one is from Sput, who just recently showcased Foundry to us. He's done a lot of work on, I believe, the Starfinder module for it.
Mm-hmm.
Or is big into that community and has been amazing help with us, showing us around Foundry and how it works and everything. But he asks, how much of the flashback do you feel should come from the GM and how much from the player? Would you do anything that's a surprise to the player whose flashback it is?
Oh yeah,
I know the answer to that one because Adam surprised the shit out of me on my first
On the
flashback.
first one, yeah. Yeah, I think it just all depends on the flashback, really. You know, I think that if the player has a story that they really want to tell, you know, and they're motivated to do it, like I try not to get in the way of it, you know. So for instance, with Kuiper, you know, John has a pretty solid vision of what Kuiper's story is. And so my input is to kind of apply the editing knife to it and direct it, the focus to where what the relevant parts are, you know, as he's coming up with it, you know. um and so I have very little to do with that one, but then like with something like Mike's first flashback, you know, Heath gave me his whole story, but I changed a piece of it to surprise him in the flashback, you know. And I like to do that from time to time. I certainly like to surprise the other players at the table and try to provide some surprise for the player themselves whose flashback it is when I can. But really, you know, the backstory is the players, that's their story, you know. And so unless there's a particular need for me to come in, I try to just guide more than control it, you know.
Yeah, I think also with, I mean, with me personally, like I've said before, I like to write a big backstory and stuff like that. But I also trust Adam a lot, to, you know, make it work and with doing the flashbacks. And usually I'm pretty involved with him. But like that first one in particular, he actually changed a couple of things. And one of them ended up changing my character's age. And I was like, honestly, a little irritated about that at first,
Mhm.
but it made more sense because the way when I wrote it, the character was 5 when that happened, but he was like, you know, doing a bring your kid to work day or whatever. But we needed the story to express that Mike was at least old enough to kind of start picking up on some of the engineering and mechanical
Mhm.
skills that his dad had. And as a 5-year-old, it was a lot less believable that that was the case. And 8 is still like, who
It's pushing it, but
that's you know, yeah, an attentive 8-year-old. But you know, having worked with a lot of 8-year-olds, like they're smarter than you think, you know.
mhm.
But I actively said, don't give me 5-year-olds for that very reason, you know.
Yeah,
But
well,
yeah, there's just a lot of trust that goes into it. And even if you don't think that sometimes like if like Adam or your GM or whoever makes a change, usually there's going to be a reason for it, right?
mhm.
It's hardly ever, unless you have a mean spirited GM, to just, you know, dunk on your story or dunk on you as a writer. You know,
Mhm.
it's collaborative. I mean, in all things, it's collaborative.
I agree. I agree. What about you? You got any thoughts on that, Josh?
Not really.
Sounds like no.
No, no. I mean, I, I do remember Heath being, I don't know if mad is the right word, but the change, the flashback you guys are talking about, I remember Heath being pretty impacted by it
Well, there
because
was
of the shock,
Mhm.
because of that
yeah,
change.
not that. There was 2 big changes, and one of them was the death of a
Yeah,
backstory character that like floored me.
that's what I was talking
And,
about. Like,
but that was awesome. Like the surprise of that made it so much more impactful for me. And I wasn't mad about that. I mean, I acted like I was mad because that's my sense of humor.
oh,
But I was like, I can't believe you
He
killed
was
yada
more mad
yada
about
yada.
that age.
I was way more
mm,
mad about him
He was
changing my
way
age.
more upset about that. He's like, that makes Mike like 48 years old. I'm like, it's fine. He's a lizard. He's fine. He's a boxer. He's good. He's in good shape. He's fine. It's all good. But yeah, to answer your question, certainly collaborative, like Heath said, I think it's important because your character's backstory is the player's story. You know, that's not the GM's. The GM is supposed to help fold the player's backstory into the main story, not say, "Oh, your backstory is no good." You know, some advice I give to the player is like try to write a backstory that would fit the theme of the adventure that you've agreed to play in. You know what I mean? We've talked about that on GM Happy Hour a lot, is like build a character that makes sense to be in the story that they're in, you know? And if you do that, then the GM should just work with you to try to align the backstory with the main story rather than shut it down, you know?
Yeah.
All
All
right.
right. So question number 2 comes from New Sheo. Would you recommend doing flashbacks in a home game?
I mean, yeah.
We did.
I don't think there's a distinction, you know, like doing a home game is still supposed to be just as good a story if that's what you're shooting for, you know? So, I mean, that again, like we talked about, that's just a tool that you can use in your repertoire if you want to tell the kind of stories that are really deep into character backstory and you think it would be valuable to use flashbacks, then use them. But if you want to play that kind of game Adam was referencing where everything is focused on the present and that's how you develop your characters, then don't use them. I wouldn't say definitively one way or the other that the act of it being a home game or a home brewed game changes whether or not you can use that tool.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that 100%. It's dependent on the table. You know, when we started STF, we're playing like we normally play. You know, we just are recording it and doing some little bit of editing to clean it up, but like we're still playing the way we play our games. You know, but if that's not your table, then that's not your table. Whether it's home or an actual play or whatever, it's the best thing to do is make sure your table's on board for any tools that you implement.
Yeah. Talk to your players. Players, if you want to see it happen, GM might not think to do it. So pitch it. You know, if you feel like it'd be a good idea for the table, talk to them.
Yeah. I mean, the harder part is like if you've got half the table that's really interested in that and half the table that doesn't really give a shit, then you got to get into some like balancing issues, you know.
For sure. And that's where, you know, it may be better to not do them if that doesn't fit the table for half the players. And, you know, that would take away some of the spotlight from them or shine too much of the spotlight on the players who do want to do that for their characters and make the others feel lesser or left out. So it's a table to table thing, but absolutely. I think it's a great tool.
One thing I did for when I was running Curse of Strahd with a completely non STF cast, right? And that was a live game and everything. And one thing I did as part of our session 0, I told them to each write they didn't have to like write out the scene, but give me the details of a scene from their past that they would like to see fleshed out into a flashback that I would do in the game. And so like before we started, everybody made one. And then I got the vibe of who liked it and who didn't, you know, and you can kind of see, okay, we tried it, that didn't work, or this works and I can use it to propel this story, but I know that I need to propel this person's story in a different way. Like, you know, we talked about the flashbacks potentially creating star players, but like a good GM can elevate some players with flashbacks and elevate the other players at their table using different methods that's more conducive to that player's style. You know, you can combine these things, just you got to make sure you spread that attention and so if you're going to give somebody a 10-minute flashback, then you need to give this person a 10-minute in the present scene, something that they can really feel effective and meaningful in doing, you know.
Right. It doesn't have to be a 1-for-1 tit for tat, like, you know, for excuse my French, but like a dick measuring contest of who gets more minutes in flashbacks. Like, it's just make sure you're paying attention to all of your characters in a semi-equal way, you know?
Cool. Well, next question is from Egg. How much of the flashback sequences do y'all talk about ahead of time? Like, I know a lot of it is written out ahead of time, but how deeply do you guys go over that before running the flashback?
I don't mean to speak for Adam, but I mean, that's really a issue by issue kind of thing. Cause like, I know for me, there's been some that me and him worked on together, and then there's been some that I just completely wrote, you
Mm-hmm.
know, like, and just presented to him, you know. So I mean, if I feel like it's much more like, do you need the GM's help on something, then get it, you know. Do you need to figure something out that's going to require the GM like making an exception or like okaying something that you aren't sure about? Get the GM's help. But the GM can also be like, hey dude, you know, I know you already have a decent bit of backstory written, so give me this one specific flashback and how you want it envisioned, and I'll read it, I'll put it out there, you know.
Mm-hmm. I mean, as far as the discussion around it, I think that there's usually a good bit of discussion between myself and the player whose flashback it's going to be, you know, leading up to when it's going to hit in the show. You know, there's definitely some conversation there. I mean, I try to read the flashbacks aloud a few times before we get to the show. That's something that I learned over the course of making the show, that it makes those flashbacks deliver better if I have a familiarity with the text. I certainly go through every flashback before it makes it to the show, just to run a proof over it and just to check for continuity stuff or anything like that, you know. So for example, Heath would write, he's like, I got one, cool, and he'll send it to me and I'll just read through it and be like, okay, this is all good. And if there's a couple notes I'll make it, and you know, make adjustments as necessary. But like, it's a back and forth conversation always, you know. Like, we're talking about everything all the time, you know. Like, we're talking about potential character decisions made in the future, not so much plot wise, because I keep all that pretty close to the chest, but like, you know, what their builds are going to be. And so, as you know, we like flavor and RP the mechanics of the game, particularly level up. So if I know that somebody's going in a certain direction, I'm like, ooh, well, maybe we can do a flashback that kind of builds towards that, you know, and we'll have a conversation about that. Or I don't know, it's just always a conversation.
All right. So
Next question.
next question. Sir Newt asks, do you guys create multiple flashbacks and wait for any of their appropriate triggers, or do you prefer to create / trigger them sequentially?
That's a tough question. I can't speak for everyone, but I don't think any of us are actively writing like 3 or 4 flashbacks at a time and waiting until we can jump them in, you know.
John with Kuiper has been. He's
Yeah.
got like a whole document of like particular flashbacks that he wants to do. Now, some are more developed than others. Some of them are just like concepts and like a bunch of like notes that he's made to kind of, you know, inspirational notes to use when it gets time to like tell that part of the story, and then he'll go and actually write it out. But I think Kuiper is a unique example in STF. Most of the time it has not been that way. You know, it has been, as I said, oh, we're starting to get into this particular vibe in the story, and I know particular things about your character's backstory. I think this would be a really good time to flesh that part out, and so let's do that, you know. And then whatever level of joint work on that goes into it, it's usually, hey, there's a reason for your character to have a flashback now, let's do that, you know. And then
And then it's just, you know, focus on that one and, you know, get it knocked out to your own satisfaction, and then we'll have a conversation about it.
Yeah, so that's kind of already answered the follow-up question that Newt had, which was, how far in advance do you write your flashbacks, and how many revisions do you usually do before debuting them on the show?
It depends mostly. I say, as far as revisions, that depends mostly on the level of impact on the meta story that particular flashback has. If it's more something that's very specific to a very specific like character trait that doesn't really affect the meta story in a way, that's going to get less revisions. You know, I'm basically just going to make sure that syntax is right and that it has a flow. But like Xeno's flashbacks, I like went over with a fine-tooth comb because those had like implications to the greater story, and so I wanted to make sure the details were right on that, you know. So it just depends on the level.
Just depends on how important your character is, you know.
Oh yeah. You know, as anything, it just depends on how many revisions that's required for that.
Mhm. All right. Well, I mean, that was, unless anybody in chat right now posts something, that was the last one for tonight.
It's okay. I think those were good questions, on topic questions, and we had a pretty good time talks this time around.
Yeah, man. Well, shoot. You know, thanks everybody who's still here. Thanks for everybody who was here, who will hear my thank you later. Congratulations, Nusheo, on your Dirty 30 t-shirt.
And thanks to people watching on YouTube or listening to this later on the podcast format.
That's
Absolutely.
right. That's right. I will say, like, if you guys are interested in GMing something for STF CONline, you've got what, 5 days left to sign up. So go ahead and get on top of that if you want to sign up for something. Which we don't have all the slots filled, right? So I would like to GM one more thing, but I think what I'll do is wait and see if every slot gets filled up, no problem. But if there's an extra one, I may fill that in.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And thanks again to Matthew Viradux for being on. It was a really good little discussion here. And man, I'm how do you guys feel? This has been our first little segment of trivia. You know, three piece trivias or whatever, but that's also our first 3 episodes of TOMTalks. I'm really enjoying hanging out with you guys.
Same.
And getting a more regular experience doing this and getting the crowd engagement a little more. You know, we don't have to like get you to give us listener questions days in advance and all that.
Well, speaking of, we have a last minute listener question.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
So yeah, Egg following up saying he'd have gotten this in sooner, but he got soap in his eye because apparently he's listening while in the shower.
He might be washing dishes
Checks
or
out.
something.
Usually
Sure.
checks out.
But yeah, he said, would y'all ever let a flashback have a dice roll that could affect the canon of the story?
Like something, okay, that's a little confusing, I guess. Like, are you saying in the flashback, you basically have like an event that has multiple potential outcomes and you roll a die to see how the flashback is going to go?
Or like
That's
maybe
how
you
I'm
have
reading
like a
it.
combat in a flashback, you know, in all
I
the
think that gets like the time travel-y weirdness, man. You know, like to me, they should be set and have the continuity to where if you leave something in a flashback up to chance, that might not line up with the present unless you were to write a success and a fail, you know, to like a branching narrative.
Well, that's
for your flashback.
I think it's a thing that's possible. We don't fucking do that, but I think that is something that's possible. Like as long as you have spent the time and writing on your character, that like if you really wanted to do that and just to be able to have a dice roll, then you have to write the story in a way that for that flashback that you have the events that happen, you have the 2 different ways or 3 or 4 different ways that it could turn out. You have to have them all written, and then all of them, the ways they could turn out, have to not mess up something in the continuity of the larger story.
Here's what I don't like about it is, and it's in particular to our purpose of using flashbacks. So flashbacks are typically used in STF land as a memory, as a representing a memory of something. And so what I don't like about introducing chance into memory is that like this character knows what happened to them in the past. You know, like they know that that happened. You know, you're not changing the past. You know, like a flashback isn't a time travel situation. Now,
there are, I'd say, precogs and witch warpers you could do that stuff in.
I mean, maybe, but it's now I know that there are systems that are designed specifically to do this kind of thing, to where you're kind of writing your backstory based on the die as you go. And I think that's something that's really cool. But like, if you're in the way that we use flashbacks specifically, is that they're to contextualize something that's happening in the now based on an event in our memory that actually happened to that character in the past.
Well, and
And
has
so, like,
already been influencing how you play, right?
Right. So to have this element of chance of, well, okay, I'm roll this dice to see if I pass or fail climbing this cliff. Well, if I fail, then I have a different perspective of cliffs because I fell 30 feet and survived it than I do if I had triumphed over this incredible cliff and climbed it. You know, like, and that influences who the person is. And that's a memory that's like, I don't know. It's too.
Well, it also makes it really weird if we're talking about mechanically, like how the GM has to look for like flashback triggers and stuff. Well, like that can completely change retroactively what the triggers for that flashback would be. You know, it gets very complicated. Now,
like if I had rolled dice for the combat between Kuiper and the Swarm in his flashback, well, I mean, that changes how the outcomes of that combat changes Kuiper's complete perspective on the Swarm war.
Yeah. What if you won?
Right. And so then, like, now everything that he's done for Kuiper and how he plays Kuiper is in limbo because, well, wait a minute, I don't actually feel this way about this and well, I don't know. In our context, no, I don't think I would do it. I do see that there could be potential for it, and I like the idea of not having a backstory at all. If that, if this is your plan to go into the game, not have a backstory at all, and then when it comes time to like dig into your backstory, you're doing it using dice to determine that. I think that could be fun, but I don't think it works for how we're telling this story.
I agree. I think that could be very fun, but it still is going to have the issue of like, basically you need everybody to be doing that to basically get, everybody's got to have the, ability to just overlook the fact that, the way that you've been playing your character will be altered by that.
Yeah,
there's a certain suspension of disbelief that would require, even if it's one person or if it's the whole table.
I mean, a way that you could potentially get around that, and this would take a lot of work and commitment from all the players and from the GM, is before you actually start playing, have a solo session 0 with each character of like, we're figuring out your backstory, what the character is, who they are. Here's some choices that are presented to you if they need help with it, and roll some dice to see what happens, how it comes up, and then we can utilize those scenes as flashbacks later.
Yeah,
but that's like a half measure. Like if you're trying to do that thing, it's for the gimmick of doing it, right?
I personally, I don't think it's worth trying.
I mean, I think there's lots of fun ways you could implement systems like that, but it's going to come down to a lot of suspension of disbelief, and a lot of just like, hey, we're doing this no matter what.
It just has to be a session 0 decision. You know what I mean? And that this is how we're going to tell the story is through randomizing.
It would not work if like when Kuiper came in, that's the kind of character that he was, where you're just rolling for whatever his backstory is every time. Like in the continued narrative of what we're doing, it would bring up so many weird little like, well, that doesn't fucking make sense.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that was a good question. You got it just in at the very end there. It's a good, thoughtful question. But I think we hit our time.
Yeah, I think we're done. I mean, we've run out of all our topics, that's for sure. I'm glad everybody was able to make it. It's always a pleasure hanging out with you gentlemen. And we will do it again the next third Monday.
Indeed. We'll see you that next time.
All right. Well, one thing left to say, we'll see you.
We'll see you.
We'll see you.